All right, let's dive into this Internet of Things thing, huh? We got a ton of sources from you guys wanting to really get a grip on what it is, not just the buzzwords, but like how it actually works, what it can do, and maybe even where it's all headed. So we've been digging through it all, and I think we've got some pretty interesting stuff to share.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it wasn't that long ago we were talking about like a couple of computers talking to each other, and now it's like practically everything is getting in on the action.
Exactly. So maybe before we get too deep, let's just level set here. What exactly are we talking about when we say Internet of Things?
Well, at its core, the Internet of Things, or IoT, is really just about connecting everyday devices, the things we use all the time, to the internet. And that lets them send and receive data and basically communicate with each other and with us.
Okay, so it's not just my phone talking to my laptop anymore.
Right, exactly. We're talking about everything. I mean, think about it. Refrigerators, cars, even like entire city systems, traffic lights and stuff. It's pretty wild when you think about it.
Yeah, one of the sources we were looking at actually mentioned that the first internet-connected device was a Coke machine back in the 80s. Can you believe that?
I know, right? It's crazy to think about. It would like report its inventory and temperature online.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It really shows you how, the things we might think of as ordinary, you know, everyday stuff can become part of this whole connected network.
Yeah.
So how does it all work? One of the things I kept seeing was this idea of different layers in an IoT system.
Yeah, yeah. Is it a good way to think about it? Like a kind of a structure. At the most basic level, there's what's called the perception layer.
Okay, perception layer. What's that all about?
Well, think about it like the senses of the system, right? This is where all the sensors are, the things that collect data about the physical world, like temperature, motion, light, humidity, really anything you can imagine measuring.
So these sensors are constantly gathering information about their surroundings.
Gotcha.
So then how did that information actually get shared and used?
Right, good question. That's where the connectivity layer comes in. This is what enables the devices to talk to each other and to the cloud, using things like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cellular networks, sometimes even satellites if you're in a remote area. It's like choosing the right language for the conversation, depending on what you need to say and who you need to say it to.
Okay, so it's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we've got these sensors gathering information, and then we've got the connectivity layer allowing them to share that information. What happens next?
Well, this is where things get even more interesting. You've got the edge layer, which is kind of like a mini brain that can be right there on the device itself.
The mini brain, huh?
Yeah, think about it like this. Instead of sending all the data to the cloud to be processed, the edge layer can handle some of it right then and there.
Oh, okay, I see. So does that speed things up?
Absolutely. Imagine a security camera, right? Instead of sending every single frame of video to the cloud, it can use edge computing to analyze the video locally and only alert you if it detects motion or something unusual.
Right, so it's more efficient. It's not clogging up the network with tons of unnecessary data. Smart.
Exactly.
So some processing happens locally, but where does the rest of the data go?
Well, ultimately, a lot of it still ends up in the cloud layer, which you can think of as this massive data center that stores, processes, and analyzes information from all these different devices.
So it's like the central brain for the entire network.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where things like identifying patterns and trends and making predictions become possible. The cloud can handle much more complex tasks than individual devices can.
Makes sense. So we've got the perception layer, the connectivity layer, the edge layer, the cloud layer. Is that all of it?
Well, there's one more important piece, and that's the application layer. This is where all that data we've been talking about actually gets translated into something meaningful, something we can interact with and use.
So this is where it all comes together, right? The connection between the digital world and the physical world.
Exactly. Think about the apps on your phone that control your smart home devices, or the platforms that businesses use to analyze data from their connected equipment. It's how we experience and benefit from all this interconnectedness.
All right, so now that we have a better grasp on how it all works, I want to get into the nitty-gritty. What can this technology actually do? I mean, we've got sources here on everything from smart homes to agriculture, even transportation.
Let's start with smart homes, since that's probably something a lot of people can relate to, right? We're not just talking about turning lights on and off with your phone anymore.
Right, right. It's gotten way more sophisticated than that.
Exactly. Think about a thermostat that learns your temperature preferences and automatically adjusts the heating and cooling to save energy.
Okay, yeah. That sounds pretty convenient and, good for the environment too. What about healthcare? Our listeners sent us a bunch of stuff about like remote patient monitoring and AI diagnostics and things like that.
That's one of the areas where IoT is really making a huge impact. You've got wearable devices now that can track things like heart rate, blood pressure, sleep patterns. All that data can be sent directly to doctors for analysis, even if the patient is miles away.
Wow. So it's almost like having a virtual doctor with you all the time. That's pretty incredible.
It is, and it can really make a difference for people with chronic conditions or who live in rural areas where access to healthcare is limited.
Absolutely. I'm seeing a theme here. Yeah. Efficiency, making things easier and more convenient.
Yeah, definitely. And that extends to other areas too, like manufacturing. There's this concept called predictive maintenance that's really taking off.
Predictive maintenance. What's that?
Basically, you put sensors on machines to monitor their performance in real time so you can spot potential problems before they cause a major breakdown.
Oh, so instead of waiting for something to break and then scrambling to fix it, you can address the issue before it even becomes a problem.
Exactly. It saves companies a ton of money and downtime.
Wow, I never thought about it like that. So it's like having a crystal ball for your equipment.
Pretty much. And it's not just factories. Think about farms. There's this whole movement towards what they call precision agriculture.
Precision agriculture. Okay, tell me more about that.
Well, it's all about using sensors and data to optimize every aspect of farming. You can monitor soil conditions, weather patterns, even the health of individual plants, all in real time.
So farmers can make more informed decisions about things like irrigation and fertilization.
Exactly. It helps them conserve resources, improve yields, and ultimately produce better quality food. And then you've got transportation, which is another area where IoT is changing the game.
Yeah, we've got some interesting sources on connected cars and like smart traffic management systems and stuff. Tell me more about that.
Well, we're already seeing a lot of cars with features like real-time navigation and even some basic predictive maintenance. But it goes way beyond that. Imagine a world where all the vehicles on the road are connected, sharing data about traffic conditions, road hazards, even their own speed and location.
So basically, the cars are talking to each other.
Exactly. And they can also talk to the infrastructure, the traffic lights and things. It could revolutionize the way we move people and goods around.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. But, it's not all sunshine and roses, right? I mean, with all this connectivity and data sharing, there got to be some downsides too.
Oh, absolutely. There are definitely some challenges and considerations we need to address, and I think it's important to be aware of those as we get deeper into this.
Well, let's not shy away from the tough questions. I'm thinking specifically about things like security and privacy. With all these devices collecting and transmitting data, it seems like there's a huge potential for things to go wrong.
Yeah, you're right. And that's something we should definitely unpack a bit further.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of scary when you think about it. All these devices collecting information about us potentially being hacked or misused. It's definitely something to consider.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it this way, right? We've got billions of devices out there, all connected to the internet, all collecting and transmitting data. That's a massive attack surface for hackers.
Right? It's not just my laptop or my phone anymore. It's like my fridge, my thermostat, even my car
Yeah.
could potentially be hacked.
Exactly. And the more devices we connect, the more vulnerable we become. So security has to be a top priority. One of the sources we looked at talked about encryption being like a crucial safeguard.
Yeah, encryption, that's where they scramble the data, right?
Yeah.
So even if someone intercepts it, they can't read it. But is that enough?
It's a good start,
Yeah.
for sure, but it's not a silver bullet. Think about it like a lock on your door. A good lock will deter most thieves, but a determined one might still find a way to break in.
Okay, so what else can be done?
Well, we need to think about security at every level of the IoT ecosystem. I'm talking about secure device design, secure data transmission, secure storage. And it's not just about the technology itself. We also need to focus on user awareness.
Right, because even with the best security systems in place, human error can still be a weak link. People need to be educated about things like strong passwords and being careful about what information they share online.
Exactly. It's a shared responsibility. Companies need to build secure systems, but users also need to take steps to protect themselves. But beyond hacking, there's also the issue of privacy, right? I mean, all these devices are collecting data about our habits, our preferences, our locations. It's a little unsettling when you think about it.
It is, and I think that's what a lot of people are concerned about, right? Who owns all this data? How is it being used? Are companies selling it to advertisers or other third parties?
Yeah, that's a really important question. And unfortunately, there's no easy answer. Data ownership and usage rights are still being debated, And there are a lot of gray areas, but I think the key is transparency. Companies need to be upfront about what data they're collecting and how they're using it.
Transparency is key.
Yeah.
But even then, do consumers really have a choice? I mean, if you want to use a smart home device, for example, you kind of have to accept that it's going to be collecting some data about you, right?
That's a valid point. And it highlights the need for clear regulations and policies to protect user privacy. We need to strike a balance between the convenience and benefits of these technologies and the right to privacy.
Right. It's not just about cool features and seamless integration. It's about making sure that our personal information is being treated responsibly. So we've got security, we've got privacy. Are there any other challenges we need to be aware of?
Well, one that comes up a lot is interoperability.
Interoperability. That's a big word. What does that mean?
Basically, it's the ability of different devices from different manufacturers to communicate and work together seamlessly.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. So like I can buy a smart light bulb from one company and a smart thermostat from another company, and they can still talk to each other and work together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the ideal scenario. But in reality, it's not always that simple. Sometimes you get what they call walled gardens, where devices from one company only work with other devices from that same company.
Right, right. That's frustrating, is that they're trying to lock you into their ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to establish some common standards and protocols to ensure that all these different devices can talk to each other, regardless of who made them,
So it's like creating a universal language for the Internet of Things.
pretty much.
But who drives that effort? Is it the government? Is it industry groups?
It's a little bit of both, actually. There are government agencies and industry consortiums working on developing open standards for IoT interoperability. But it's a slow process, and there's always going to be some pushback from companies that benefit from keeping their systems closed.
Right. It's like they don't want to share their toys.
Exactly. But beyond interoperability, there's also the issue of cost and complexity. Implementing and managing these large-scale IoT solutions can be really expensive
Hmm.
and require a lot of specialized expertise.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not just about buying a few smart gadgets and plugging them in. You need the hardware, the software, the infrastructure, the people who know how to put it all together.
Exactly. So there are some real barriers to entry for individuals and organizations that want to fully leverage the power of IoT. It's not as easy as it might seem.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, security, privacy, interoperability, complexity. It sounds like there's a lot to consider. But let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the future. Where is all this headed? What kind of advancements are we likely to see in the world of IoT in the coming years?
Well, that's where things get really exciting. I mean, we're just scratching the surface of what's possible. And there are a lot of really cool developments on the horizon. One of the biggest ones is 5G.
5G, yeah, I've heard a lot about that.
Mm.
But how will it specifically impact the IoT? Is it going to be a game changer, or is it just like a slightly faster internet connection?
No, it's way more than that. 5G is going to unlock a whole new level of possibilities for the IoT. I mean, we're talking about data transfer speeds that are up to 100 times faster than 4G.
Wow, 100 times faster. That's insane. So what does that mean in practical terms?
Well, think about it. Devices will be able to communicate with each other and with the cloud almost instantaneously.
So imagine things like self-driving cars that can react to changes in traffic conditions in real time, or remote surgery where the surgeon is miles away from the patient.
Exactly. And it's not just about speed. 5G can also handle a massive number of connected devices simultaneously.
So we can have like entire cities where every traffic light, every parking space, every building is connected and communicating.
Exactly. That's the vision. But it's not stopping there. We're already starting to hear about 6G, which is going to push the boundaries even further.
6G. Wow, we haven't even gotten used to 5G yet.
I know, right? It's moving so fast. But 6G could bring things like holographic communication and tactile internet, where you can actually feel things through the internet. It's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. So we've got 5G, 6G. What else is driving innovation in the IoT space?
Well, AI is a big one. Artificial intelligence is really the key to making sense of all the data that these devices are collecting. I mean, you can apply machine learning algorithms to that data and identify patterns, make predictions, automate decisions. It's incredible.
So it's not just about collecting data anymore. It's about using that data to make things smarter and more efficient.
Exactly. Imagine a smart home that anticipates your needs, or a healthcare system that predicts and prevents diseases. The possibilities are endless.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. But all this data processing requires a lot of computing power. Where is that happening? Is it all in the cloud?
The cloud is still important, but we're also seeing a shift towards edge computing.
Edge computing, you mentioned that earlier, right?
Oh, sure.
That's where some of the processing happens locally on the device itself.
Exactly. And as edge computing technology continues to advance, we're going to see even more processing power at the edge. It's going to blur the lines between the physical and digital worlds.
So we're talking about a world where technology is more integrated into our lives, more seamless, more responsive. It's pretty exciting. But it also sounds like there are some big ethical questions we need to be asking.
Absolutely. I mean, as we delegate more tasks and decisions to these intelligent systems, we need to be very thoughtful about how we design and deploy them.
Right, because technology is a tool. It can be used for good or for bad.
Exactly. So we need to have open and honest conversations about the potential consequences of these technologies.
And it's not just a conversation for tech experts or policymakers. It's a conversation for everyone. Because ultimately, we're all going to be impacted by these changes.
I agree. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of technology, so I hope people will take the time to learn about these issues and make their voices heard.
All right, so we've really gone deep on this Internet of Things thing, right? I mean, we've talked about the technology, the potential benefits, the challenges. But I think what's really blowing my mind is this idea of like a new kind of intelligence emerging.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's not just about individual devices being smart anymore. It's about how they all work together, how they connect and communicate and learn from each other.
Right. It's like this, I don't know, a collective intelligence almost, like a hive mind, but for machines.
Exactly. And that opens up some really incredible possibilities. Think about it. You could have a world where your fitness tracker talks to your refrigerator and suggests recipes based on your activity level. Or a city where traffic lights adjust in real time based on traffic flow, to minimize congestion.
Yeah, that's amazing. But it also kind of freaks me out a little bit. I mean, who's in control of all this? How do we make sure this interconnected intelligence is used for good and not for, something bad?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And honestly, I don't think anyone has all the answers yet. But I think it's crucial that we start having these conversations now. We need to be thinking about the ethical implications of this technology and developing frameworks to guide its development and use.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's about the choices we make, the rules we put in place, the values we embed in these systems.
Exactly. We're basically writing the rule book for a new era, one where the lines between human intelligence and artificial intelligence become increasingly blurred. And that's a huge responsibility.
It is. And it's not just a responsibility for tech companies or governments. It's a responsibility for all of us. We all need to be informed and engaged in this conversation.
I agree. The future of this technology is not predetermined. It's something we're creating together through the choices we make every day.
So what can we do? I mean, it all seems so big and complex. Where do we even start?
Well, I think the first step is just being aware.
Hmm.
Educate yourself about the technology, about the potential benefits and risks. Think critically about the information you're consuming. And don't be afraid to ask questions, to challenge the status quo, to demand better from the companies and organizations that are developing and deploying these systems.
Right. We need to be informed consumers, informed citizens, and we need to make our voices heard.
Exactly. We have a say in how this technology shapes our lives, and I believe we can use it to create a more connected, more sustainable, more equitable world. But it's going to take all of us working together to make that happen.
Well said. And I think that's a great note to end on. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but we've only scratched the surface. The world of IoT is vast and complex, and it's constantly evolving. So we encourage you to keep learning, stay curious, and most importantly, stay engaged in the conversation. The future is being written now, and your choices matter. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you next time.